This is the vlog for November 1st. This is going to be a rough one. I graduated from college in 2005 from the University of Washington with a bachelor's degree in English, a literature focus with a creative writing track, which doesn't really mean anything. It just meant I took more creative writing courses than was typical of a literature degree. I immediately went on a vacation that my parents paid for to Disney World. That was my graduation present. And when I came back a week later, I got into contact with a company called Mentor 4 to become a video game tester at Nintendo of America. I continued to work at Nintendo of America for a couple of years till about 2007. I left to work for a couple of months at a company my roommate worked at called Amaze Entertainment or Kryptonite. Both were development studios owned by a parent company called Foundation 9. I had a 2-month gig there. I went back to Nintendo for one more contract, and then I started working at Amaze for about a year and a half. While I was there, I worked primarily on a game called Where the Wild Things Are, which came out on the Nintendo Wii, the Microsoft Xbox 360, and the Sony PlayStation 3. I also worked on a handful of other games while I was there, but my contract finished there, and then almost immediately I got called back to Nintendo, and that would have been about 2008 or 2009, and I worked at Nintendo until yesterday. My work with them was completed, and it was completed early because of a mistake I made. Out of respect for them and for any parties I may have offended, I'm not going to say exactly what happened, but it's on me. I recognize that and I own it completely. It was a mistake I made. I spoke without thinking in a situation, and I did so in such a way that basically the management in my department was left with no other choice than to complete my employment. So yeah, I worked there for about 11 and a half years. I worked there over a course of 13 years. But like I said, I took a break to work at that other company. Foundation 9 was eventually bought by Glue Mobile. And sadly, the studio that I worked in was shut down quite a few years ago as Glue started to sort of lose the titanic market share that they had. So a lot of my friends ended up looking for jobs elsewhere. Some of them eventually got hired back, but they finally closed the studio completely. And I don't know exactly where everybody is now. But yeah, I just lost my job. I'm doing okay. I've been ranging from, handling it very well to doing very, very poorly. But to be perfectly honest, I was starting to have a lot less fun in that job. And I think that sort of showed. I didn't talk much about what I was doing because I couldn't. I had signed a non-disclosure agreement not to discuss any of the work that happened at Nintendo. And I will honor that agreement. I am not going to suddenly sprout secrets about what Nintendo's working on. I'm pretty sure I could get sued over what little money I have left now for doing something like that. So yeah, don't expect me to start turning state secrets over. Um, um, but yeah, I was honestly starting to look at other options for employment anyway. Um, and this sort of gives me the excuse. Now, that said, I've got money saved up right now, so I'm not in completely dire straits. And the combination of the situation and the timing has almost seemed fortuitous to me, because today is the start of National Novel Writing Month. Excuse me. And I have to try. I've written a novel in my spare time, and it took 3 years while I was working. And I want to try and write something shorter, something that is definitely more publishable in some form, and see where that takes me. And it could take me nowhere. I'm aware that this could all be for naught. It's a difficult market to get into. There's lots of competition. I read a very worrisome article about a fellow who had been published basically through Amazon, and then suddenly had all of his books made unavailable, and with no real explanation why. And I know that that's a risk, but my intention is to go through an actual publisher and only go to online self-publishing as sort of a last resort. You get more of the money directly, but again, something can happen where suddenly you just don't have your source of revenue anymore, and that's scary, having just lost my only source of revenue. But I know I can do it. I know I can write the book. I know I can write something that's worth getting published. I know that I can write something that could be successful. I can't predict how successful, but I can only say that I've read things that made me wonder why I've ever not just pursued this as a career. I know that I have what it takes, but that all these sorts of things are half opportunity, half skill. So I have the skills, but I don't know that I have the opportunities. But I'm going to take the rest of this year to try and make this work. Mostly I want to try and get it done in November. I am going to see my sister, but I intend to bring the laptop and just keep working on it while I'm out there. Speaking of my sister, she has kindly asked us all to get flu shots and Tdap shots. And don't worry, this isn't going to be terribly graphic. I got my flu shot here with a sticker I don't really recognize. I don't think it's even legible in the camera. And I got my Tdap sticker right here, which is much more obviously a Justice League sticker. It's upside down, but I think it's sort of funny that I guess the only Band-Aids they have that are small enough to cover a needle prick are the kid ones. I'm also really sort of surprised, because I remember just recently sitting in Starbucks while I was doing something. I heard a mother talking about her son was going to have to get a shot, a vaccination, and this wonderful elderly old gentleman leaned over and said, "Don't worry, buddy. You won't even feel it. It's just a tiny little thing, and then it's over." Now, when I was a kid, I remember getting my blood drawn. They had a little thing that you stuck your thumb in and would prick your finger, and it hurt. I mean, it hurt. It just, there's no other way to put it. It's a very sensitive part of the body, and you get a big welling of blood comes out, and it just, and it hurts, and they make this whole big thing, and they had to hold my arm out, and they just. So that's what I think of when I think of getting blood drawn or getting vaccinations. And blood draws are actually a little bit easier than that, whole ordeal that I had to go through as a kid. They stick it in the arm. It's a pain in the ass and leaves a big welt afterwards, a big bruise looking thing. and you just sit there and you go, "Ugh," and then you feel like, I need an apple juice and a cookie until you get your blood sugar back up, essentially. I still don't like that, but this was nothing, especially after all the heartache I've gone through in the last couple of days. It was just the tiniest, barely a pinch. A pinch would hurt more to just grab the ow. So that was definitely not so bad. However, it has left my arms a little bit sore, which I understand that is a fairly common thing to have happen. I don't know if it's the skin sensitivity or if it's just the vaccine in my system. But at the very least, now both of my arms hurt roughly the same amount, which is nice. A little bit of symmetry actually seems to make the whole thing feel better. But yeah, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep doing these vlogs, and I feel like I still have to be careful about what I say, just because I don't know exactly what I am liable for. But the other thing is that I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Nintendo is a great company, and while I have been a disappointment in this particular circumstance, I don't hold it against them. They did what they had to do in this situation, and I'm going to continue to buy Nintendo products. I encourage everybody, if you like Nintendo games, keep buying Nintendo games. I'm looking forward to Metroid Prime 4. I'm a little disappointed I'll never get to test it, but I'll get to play the finished product, which is usually better anyway. And I'm going to keep doing these vlogs. I'm surprised that this year in particular, the year that I decided to do this, has ended up being more or less the worst year of my life. And admittedly, there's room for it to get worse. I keep wondering if I'm going to get hit by a car or have my car stolen or something else even more terrible might happen. But it's like I said at the start of these things. I have to have hope that the next day is going to bring something better, and I'm trying to see this as an opportunity to do something that I've wanted to do for a very long time. And so, as always, I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better.